In the heart of the Serengeti, where ancient dust hides the footprints of kings, a lion was born beneath a blood-orange sky. The savanna pulsed with life, yet it was indifferent till Legusione, the strongest, endured, among dry grasses and winds. That whispered of past monarchs, a cub, opened his eyes for the first time. He was the son of Bob Marley, a lion whose wild mane resembled dreadlocks, and whose dominance had been carved into the territory with fang and claw. They called the cub Bob Jr. To most, he was just another heir in a world of short-lived dynasties. But there was something different in his gaze, restless, fiery, too focused for one so small. It was said that the cub never played like the others, he observed. He calculated. And when he pounced, it was never without purpose. From his earliest days, Bob Jr. seemed out of step with the innocent rhythm of his siblings. While others nestled close for warmth, he wandered. While they nuzzled in play, he stood alone, watching the horizon as if answering some distant call only he could hear. He wasn't just growing, he was preparing. As months passed, his discontent with the boundaries of cubhood became undeniable. The Serengeti stretched before him like a challenge, and he met it with hunger in his heart and fury in his steps. At barely 2 years old, Bob Jr. began to distance himself from his father's pride. He wandered far beyond the borders considered safe, alone, and unguarded. These ventures were reckless, some said. Suicidal, others claimed. But he wasn't careless, he was learning. One evening, following the scent of a recent kill, Bob Jr. stumbled upon 2 nomadic males, larger, older, and hungry. They charged. He didn't run. His roar was raw, underdeveloped but loud. He fought. And though he left bleeding and limping, he survived. What mattered wasn't the wound on his flank. It was the scar etched into his memory Bob Jr. would remember. And when the moment came, he would return. It's not as prey but as retribution. Time sharpened him. Solitude tempered his instincts. Every wound turned into resolve. Each silent battle. With hyenas, failed hunts, near-death escapes, Bob Jr. absorbed it all. His muscles thickened. His gait became heavier. His eyes darker. By the time he returned to the pride, he wasn't the same lion who had left. He was taller, broader, with the first signs of a full mane darkening his shoulders like a storm rolling in. But returning wasn't about comfort. It was about conquest. The pride still belonged to his father, the aging Bob Marley. Once a feared monarch, now his joints cracked when he walked. His roars were slower, his dominance waning. Bob Jr. didn't challenge him immediately. He waited, watched. And when he finally approached, the sky was painted in the deep red of dusk. The fight wasn't long. The young lion struck with explosive force, pushing the older one back. With a speed that stunned even the lionesses, Bob Marley growled, but it was a sound of pride, not rage. The two clashed, mane against mane, power against legacy. But Bob Jr. won. What happened next wasn't expected. In the law of the wild, the old must die to make way for the new. But Bob Jr., towering above his defeated father, didn't kill him. He stepped back. He let the old king live in, act unheard of in the brutal hierarchy of lions. And in return, Bob Marley didn't resist. He receded into the edges of the territory, no longer king, but allowed to exist in the shadows. The lionesses accepted the new ruler without question. He was stronger, younger, more capable. And as the days passed, they brought meat to the edge of the territory where the old king lay in silence. Bob Jr. never interfered. Weeks later, Bob Marley left on his own, walking into the tall grass and never returning. He died as quietly as he had once roared, disappearing not in defeat, but in dignity. Bob Jr. was now sovereign. Not by bloodshed, but by force, and something more dangerous, restraint. His reign began not with a roar, but with a silence that said everything. Pride had a new king, and the savanna had a new shadow to fear. Bob Jr.'s rule wasn't built on chaos or conquest. It was forged through unwavering control, absolute vigilance, and a calculated presence. He didn't expand his territory unnecessarily. He didn't provoke wars. Instead, he fortified what was his and let every rival know it with a stare, a roar, or the simple thunder of his footsteps on the dust. He became a phantom monarch, appearing when needed, vanishing when not. His mane had thickened into a cascade of black and gold, like a crown scorched by fire. His eyes held a weight that made other males pause mid-step, and even the lionesses lowered their gaze in his presence. He wasn't beloved, he was respected and feared. Most lions defend through brute force. Bob Jr. ruled through psychological dominance. He would stand motionless on a ridge at dawn, staring down into distant valleys. His presence alone was a boundary. Few dared to test it, even the rangers. And safari guides knew his rhythm. When his silhouette crested the hills in morning light, the landscape fell quiet. A tourist fumbled for cameras. Guides whispered legends. And as he passed, slow and deliberate, he would sometimes glance toward the jeeps, not out of fear, but acknowledgement. He knew he was being watched, wanted to be remembered. Yet for all his glory, Bob Jr. never became complacent. Trained his pride like a general, dispersing them in small groups, positioning lionesses strategically across water holes and hunting zones. Cubs were hidden in safe, dry dens. Marley, his quieter brother, remained nearby, acting as a silent sentinel. Their bond remained firm, even though Marley had never been a warrior. He followed. Bob Jr. led. Then came the northern winds, carrying with them the scent of rivals. 3 young males crossed into his domain. Their bodies were lean and strong, their movements sharp. They were brothers, traveling as a coalition. Most dominant, lions would gather their pride, prepare for war, or flee. Bob Jr. did none of that. He vanished, it seemed, for a moment that the king had run. The new coalition advanced, finding an oddly quiet territory. No cubs, no lionesses, no roaring. The land felt empty, but it was a trap. On the first night, one of the invaders separated from the others, following a trail near the edge of the grassland. The The roaring came late, a single blast that shattered the night. By the time the others arrived, the youngest male lay broken beneath a tree, his neck snapped. The next night, the second brother was found dead near the river. This time there was no sound, only tracks in the mud and blood in the water. The third male tried to escape. Bob, Jr., hunted him down by morning. After his ruthless dismantling of the young coalition, Bob Jr. stood untouchable. He had not only defended his kingdom, he had done so with an eerie precision that made it clear this was no longer just a lion. This was a force of nature, but time, indifferent to power, kept marching. The first signs were subtle, a limp that lasted a little longer, a slower rise after sleep. His muscles, once as firm as stone, began to soften. The mane, still majestic, started to gray around the edges, yet his eyes burned the same. He no longer needed to fight. His name did it for him. Even young coalitions approaching the borders turned away after catching his scent. He had become myth while still alive, a ghost king with breath and blood. But kings don't live forever. In early 2023, a new coalition appeared, younger, faster, and more aggressive. They did not remember the terror of his prime. Not watch their brothers vanish into the shadows after chasing Bob Jr. They smelled age and saw opportunity. This time, Bob Jr. didn't disappear. He didn't scatter his pride, didn't plan ambushes. Marley had already passed, his quiet brother gone, leaving Bob alone in the dust. Perhaps Bob knew this would be the end. Maybe that's why he stood his ground. When the three new lions entered the territory, they found the king waiting, not flanked by lionesses, not hidden in tall grass, but exposed beneath the open sky. His mane blew in the breeze. Though weathered, remained towering. He didn't roar, he simply stared. They charged, and Bob Jr., with one final surge of the beast he once was, met them. The fight was brutal. Roars tore through the silence like thunder. Dust turned to clouds. Blood painted the earth. Bob Jr. held his ground, knocking one rival back, tearing into another, but the third leaped onto his back, driving claws deep into the shoulders. That once carried an empire, he refused to go down, but his body couldn't keep up with the will that drove it. Eventually, the mighty lion collapsed beneath the weight of time and teeth. When the final blow landed, he didn't cry out, he exhaled, and the savanna held its breath. Later that evening, guides found his body, lying beneath the acacia tree where he often rested. There were no lionesses nearby, no cubs, no followers, just silence, the kind that comes only after greatness. Word spread quickly. Across continents, wildlife lovers mourned. Documentaries rewrote their endings. Tourists posted old photographs. Rangers stood in silence, and the Serengeti, now missing its colossal guardian, seemed emptier. Bob Jr. didn't die in glory. He died in inevitability, but in doing so, he proved that even legends are mortal, and mortality is what makes them eternal. They buried nothing. Bob Jr.'s body remained in the wild, as all true kings do. No statue, no ceremony, no grave. But he was buried in stories and hushed safari rides where guides pointed to the horizon and whispered, this was his land. In photographs that captured his golden mane against the scarlet dusk. In tracks slowly erased by wind, but not forgotten by memory. His death was not the end of a reign. It was the beginning of a myth. Lions came and went, coalitions formed, dissolved, bled into legend. But Bob Jr. was different. He wasn't remembered just for power. He was remembered for presence, for being the lion who didn't just rule the Serengeti, but haunted it. Even now, tourists swear they feel something in the air, like they're being watched. Rangers hear a lone roar echo in valleys with no lion in sight. Sometimes, when the sun sets just right, it casts a silhouette on a distant hill that looks ... familiar. And for a moment, It's as if the colossal king still walks, because legends do not die. They wait in dust, in wind, in shadow, and the Serengeti remembers.